Steady quarter also coming in from Dabur. Profits have jumped almost 14%. Sunil Duggal joining us to take us through earnings this time around. Mr. Duggal, tell us a little bit more, in terms of what's really driven growth for you this quarter.
Yeah, I think the sales growth has been pretty moderate, 2.4%. The good news is that the margin improvement continues unabated. So despite the fairly moderate top line, we were able to grow our EPS by around 12.5%. So it's a mixed bag. We had a lot of headwinds this quarter on account of Nepal issues, unseasonably warm winters, many other factors which were perhaps of an exceptional and one-off nature and which drove down our revenue streams considerably. But we didn't let it hamper the margin profile, so we are pretty happy about the outcome on that front.
Tell us more about the trouble that you had, for instance, in Nepal, and with the beverages segment. How have some of these developments impacted you?
Yeah, well, the Nepal issue we all know is still the way it was last few months. The Nepal border effectively shut down, the Birganj border shut down on the 24th of September, and it remains the same this way. We were able to take out some product through rail, but that's very sporadic. But the road transportation, which was really the backbone of our entire supply chain, is still shut down. So nothing has changed as far as the Nepal plant is concerned. We'll be able to get some production out this month, but substantially below what we normally do. So we have obviously mitigated the situation through alternative production centers, contract manufacturing, ramping up our Nevai and Sri Lanka plants, etc., etc. So I don't think there'll be substantial damage or any meaningful damage in terms of our sales in this quarter at least. But of course, we'll have to pay a little bit more in terms of excess freight and duties, so there will be some profit impact. So Nepal remains the way it is as far as the political situation is concerned. We hope it will improve and ease this quarter, but there's no guaranteeing that will happen. And to your second question, the impact of the juice business was considerable in this quarter. The business, which was growing in the teens and was one of our fastest growing verticals, degrew by around 23.5%. So that was a huge setback to us.
Right. Your raw material costs as a percentage of sales have also remained constant. That's at 34%. What's the outlook on that front?
Well, it changes from quarter to quarter, but I think in terms of the growth of margins, that will start tapering off on a lower base of last year. We will still have some margin improvements going into the fourth quarter, and hopefully those will continue into the next year. But the impact of material deceleration in prices will obviously reduce a little bit going forward compared to the previous 3 quarters.
And which are the segments that you see driving growth going forward? What's the overall growth outlook as well for FY17?
Well, I am assuming that the growth in terms of categories for consumer staples is not going to be significantly different from this year. Now, I hope that assumption changes because this was a particularly bad year in terms of category growth rates. But assuming that that does not happen and demand remains subdued, I think we can still hope for a growth in the high single digits in terms of total revenues for the domestic business. We are actually hoping to do better than that over the next few years, but we have moderated expectations at least in the near term. Having said that, a good monsoon and other economic stimuli might significantly alter the whole picture and very quickly. So we may get better demand than what we have now. But at the moment, our expectations are a little bit on the cautious side. We don't expect any significant uptick in growth, both from the rural and urban areas.
Any expectations from the budget this time around, Mr. Duggal?
Well, we were really hoping for GST to come, but I don't think it's going to happen this budget. So hopefully it'll happen sooner rather than later, and that would definitely positively impact our entire business. So that is really the biggest expectation as far as we are concerned from the budget. Otherwise, not particularly.
All right.
And also, secondly, I do hope that the budget will provide some economic stimulus, enhance consumption, particularly in the rural areas.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us and taking us through the earnings this time around. That's Dabur for you. Stock up about 2%. Let's take a break. We come back with more on the other side. It's all about earnings this afternoon. Stay with us.